G'day and welcome to another 2022 player report card, and we are up to Jack Martin, which is going to be an interesting one. It always was going to be an interesting one with Jack and where he sits, what he's done this year, and what happens moving forward with Martin. 27 years of age, you would think that's right in the sweet spot. He'll turn 28 before the start of next season. And we've spoken so much about that real void of having players, in that age group who played a lot of football, 28 to 32. He's going into that sort of stage of his career right now, and he's played the 135 games. A lot of those came at the Gold Coast Suns, 97 of those. And once again, third year at the football club, only the 12 games. That's 38 games across 3 seasons at our club. We invested heavily in him, and that's a poor return. That's a poor return. Position this year, and probably the last 2 with us has been predominantly forward, and I even think this year more so than probably previous years. He's spent a lot of time inside forward 50. I don't know if that's got to do with his body or the role he's playing, but he's certainly spent a lot of time. You don't see him a lot up the ground. I'm not saying he doesn't go outside the 50-metre arc, but he does spend a lot of time sort of planted inside our forward half. Can he play midfield? Can he play in other positions? I think he can. I think he's got some attributes where he could be played somewhere else, but it's what we want him to do. Where is he going to be best suited for us moving forward? I think it's in our forward half. Contract status, he signed that 5-year deal when he first arrived at the football club, and next year will be into the 4th year of that contract. He comes out of contract at the end of 2024. From a draft perspective, we didn't give a lot up for him. We didn't have to really trade for him when he wanted to get out of the Gold Coast Suns. It sort of, we couldn't get a deal done with them. They were probably asking for too much, and Sauce dug his heels in, and we sort of asked him to nominate himself in the pre-season draft, and we were able to pick him up then. And originally he was part of that sort of mini draft, where the Gold Coast Suns, I think they had access to 17-year-olds. I think Jager O'Meara was one of those initially, and Jack Martin. They were unable to play any AFL football in their first season. So he's had 9 years now in the system. Those game spans now 11, 12, 21 and 22. They're his best years. Years number 3 and 4 at the Suns, where he played a lot of football in that time. 15, 16, then with us, 15, 11 and 12. This is where I suppose it becomes a little bit, we get a clear snapshot this season of just what went wrong. And this has become somewhat of a consistent storyline with Jack Martin at our football club. So I think he had a relatively uninterrupted pre-season, from what I gather. He was in contention right the way through the practice matches, and played round 1 in the seniors against the Tigers on a Thursday night in that round 1 game. And then unfortunately he copped COVID and missed round 2 against the Bulldogs. And it was sort of disappointing, because he actually played okay against the Tigers, and he was surprisingly made medical sub in round 3 against the Hawks on his return. They decided to make him medical sub. He didn't get a run in that game against Hawthorn. Returned in round 4 played right through to round 8. However, in that round 8 game against Adelaide, late in that game, he was subbed out with a calf complaint. And I suppose that was the start, really. That was the start of, there's some issues going on here. And yeah, it continued pretty much for the rest of the season. He missed the next 3 games, and then we had the bye, so it was essentially 4 weeks off. Made his return in round 13 against the Bombers at the MCG. Played round 14 the following week against the Tigers on a sort of a coldish winter night at the MCG, and he was subbed out late in that game against the Tigers, and it was announced sort of after the game that he had some calf tightness in that game. And they also mentioned throughout the week that he'd be a test to play. He'd be a test to play against Fremantle the following week in round 15. And he didn't get up for that game. In fact, he didn't get up for the next 6 games. So that calf tightness turned into something a little bit more sinister. And it just seemed to go on and on and on and on. When's Jack Martin going to return to this team? He finally made his return in round 21 on the road against Brisbane at the Gabba, and played the last 3 games against Brisbane, Melbourne, and then the Pies in that final game of the year. So there was never any continuity at all in regards to Jack Martin this season. Very hard to get a read on him if you can't get them on the park. Statistically, not great. When you have a look at his stats, I think it's what they're asking him to do. It's a very difficult position to play. In regards to, particularly when you've got 2 dominant key forwards in your front half, and we're talking about Harry and Charlie, and a lot of the traffic goes in their direction. And what are the others asked? What are they required to be doing? Particularly that sort of Jack Martin role. Is he third tall? He's been asked to really apply a lot of defensive pressure. So there's not a lot of glory in that position, because externally, unless you're kicking goals, there's sort of a perception that you're not doing your job. I think there were some snippets and there were some occasions where he really looked like, he was going to be really good for us in regards to making an impact. And then there's times in games where he's hardly noticed. He sort of drifts in and out. And unless you're watching him closely, he's like a lot of other players on our list. They do tend to sort of drift out of games. However, statistically, tackles inside 50 above average, goals, kicked a goal a game from his 12 outings, 11 behinds. There were 3 games without a goal kicked in a game. And he had 3 games where he kicked multiple goals. His best tally was 3 against the D's in round 22. Contested possession rate above average at 46%, and goal assists above average as well. I think the contested possession rate sort of does show that he's a pretty hard-at-it footballer. I don't think his courage has ever been questioned. I think when the ball's on, he's pretty tough. He's pretty tough. He can win a contested ball, and I think the stats sort of back that up. Average in score involvements, marks. Does he have the opportunities? Is he working hard enough? It's very hard to say. Is he working hard enough to find space, to win more uncontested marks, to push up the ground a little bit harder? And goal accuracy, 48% below average in disposals. Doesn't win a lot of the ball, but sometimes that position doesn't allow you to win a lot of the ball. Inside 50s, this 1.7 below average. And this, I suppose, backs up my point before that. He probably spent more time inside forward 50 than out of it this year. And I think the pressure acts is something which probably surprised me. I think he's a reasonably good tackler. His tackles inside 50 above average. But what else is he doing in there? What else is he doing? Not hitting the scoreboard regularly. What else? Because the score involvements are slightly down and the pressure acts are slightly down as well. Yeah. Can you get a read on those stats? Certainly not great stats for someone who's on a 5-year deal and was reportedly on big money. But at the same time, you've got to take into consideration that there's never been really any continuity about his football as well in regards to injuries and getting on the park for a significant period of time. It's almost like he comes in for 3 or 4 games, starts to show something, then bang, he's out. Comes back in, takes a while to get going, starts to show, bang, straight back out. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work like that. Not sustainable at all. Best games, I mean, he's played 12 of them. One of them's a medical sub where he didn't get a run. One where he was out of the game really early against Adelaide, where he hardly played, subbed out in another game. So I think round 1 he showed. He got criticised in that game, but it was Jack Martin in that last quarter who I reckon, as Dwayne Russell loves to say, the fire starter. He was the fire starter, and I think that's one of his strengths. He can get you going. He can get you going. You need those types of players that can get you going with something sort of magical. And he's able to do that. So I think that round 1 game certainly showed us on the park, but unfortunately we couldn't. Liked his game against Port Adelaide in round 5, 17 and 2 goals. And that, I mean, the one that sticks out is the 3 goals against the D's. He only had 9 touches, but that's your classical impact player role. You know, in the role he's playing inside forward 50, where you've got Harry and Charlie, but also your third tall or your other player can chip in and provide something a little bit different in the mould of a Gary Rowan. Now, I'm not saying he's as good as an Isaac Heaney or he's as effective as those types of players, but that's the type of player that Jack Martin is. He's going to have times where you go, where the fuck is Jack Martin? What's he doing? And next thing you know, he's popped up with 3 goals. Okay, and he's got you going. Okay, it's hit the scoreboard. That's what he can do well. Worst game, I disliked his game against his former side, the Gold Coast Suns, in that game in round 4. I just thought he was really disappointing. He missed 2 really easy shots on goal. And when you get beaten by the Gold Coast Suns over there and a bloke that, you know, you want your blokes on your list who used to play for the club that they go back and play against, you want them performing, and he didn't. It was a poor game. For me, I mean, we see him play. We know what his strengths are. For me, as I mentioned before, he's your impact player. If that's what we're going to use him as, pure impact. I didn't mind him in the midfield, but you can't see that happening too often anymore, considering the depth we've got in there now. You know, has he got some good balance in the air and on the deck, showing that he's a good ground ball get player, can take a mark. We'd like to see him do a little bit more of that. I think he's got some genuine class. Can be a difficult matchup. Who do you play on a Jack Barnes? It can be a difficult matchup for the opposition. And I think he is pretty hard at it. You know, he's got some silky skills, but he's also showed that he's pretty bloody tough as well. Although his desperation at times has been questioned. I suppose that's more along the lines of intensity and possible work rate. You know, I think he's got a pretty good engine. He's got some good speed at times, but maybe his work rate has been questioned. Weakness is durability. Will it ever change? Will it? You know, what's been done about it? Is it partly responsibility of, well, obviously it's responsibility to both club and individual, but where's the real problem lie with Jack Martin? You know, I don't know. At 27, I question. You know, you got to question at 27 years of age. You get to question a bit of desire and leadership and what you want to get out of the game. Is he a bit of a floater? Um, Time will only tell with that. One word, just waste. Just waste. Waste. Because you see a little bit, you see glimpses, and then it's just gone. You know, so it's a waste. It really is. When 222 is an opportunity to play finals football, and he was clearly, you would consider Michael Voss, you know, when he was available, he was part of the best 22. It's a waste. Waste individually, but more importantly, waste for the football club and the team. And what are we actually after in our front half? What is the combination that, I mean, Voss has had 12 months now to have a real good look at it. What is the combination that he really wants in there? Long-term contracts for Charlie and Harry, 2 more years for Martin. Is it Charlie, Harry? Is it the three smalls? Is it Durden now, Motlop, and Owies? Where does it leave Silvani? Where does it leave Martin? And where does it leave someone like David Cunningham as well? Who, if all goes to plan and his body is okay, where's he going to play? Where does he fit into that front half? And Fisher as well, you know, rotating through the middle. So there's not room for all of them. Not room for all of them, and you chuck in the likes of a Brody Kemp as well, and their desire maybe to play him forward. So there is some pressure for spots, but what is the combination that we want? And is a really fit and firing Jack Martin? Is he in the mind and the consideration of Michael Voss as clearly in our best 22, in front of a Jack Silvani, clearly in front of a Jack Silvani. I can only give him a 4 out of 10, but based on the money that he's been paid and the output he's given, which is disappointing. Because I think he did show on occasions that he played some pretty bloody good football, but not enough of it. Moving forward, he's just one of a few on our list, you know, and he's not the only one. There's a great unknown, particularly, and a worry with their bodies and their output and getting them onto the park consistently. And you've got to ask the question, is he that good? Is he that good? We see the glimpses, but is that all we're going to see? I mean, if we can get him on the park next year for 20 games, I think we're doing pretty bloody well. And I think we'll see a not a bad player, but is that enough? I don't know. He'll play a role. Inside our front half, I think. But it's been pretty bloody disappointing so far. Tell me what you think, guys, on Jack Martin. Speak soon.